Welcome to the Daily Conversation, a rundown of the stories that have us talking today. All of these stories are linked at the bottom of the screen, so you can click around in the video as you'd like. Or you can sit back and enjoy the show. If you were following the reports of the Boston Marathon bombings live on the internet as we were, you probably came across a lot of conflicting reports. Now, one of the main drivers of these initial reports was the New York Post, which was spreading misinformation that was picked up by thousands on social media as well as many credible news outlets. The Post reported that 12 people were dead when it turns out that only 3 had died. And they said that Boston police had identified a Saudi national and had that person under guard at a Boston hospital. This also turned out to be false. The now infamous Saudi national turned out to be simply a 20-year-old young man who was in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong skin color. He was badly injured by the blast and was running from the scene in panic like everyone else when he was tackled by a bystander for looking suspicious. While at the hospital, he was questioned by police simply because he was brown, who then sent a bunch of police officers to his apartment and searched it with canine dogs and then questioned his roommate for over 5 hours. So the Post was wrong. This young man was never a suspect. He was just a tragic victim of racial profiling. This is further proof that the rag that is the New York Post has no journalistic integrity. All they have is a sensationalist drive for page views. Of course, we shouldn't be surprised by the New York Post's actions. After all, they are owned by News Corporation, which is owned by Rupert Murdoch, the same Rupert Murdoch that owns and operates Fox News, the fear-mongering right-wing cable news channel. And it's important to remember that it was Rupert Murdoch's News of the World that was implicated in the vast phone hacking scandal in Britain recently. So News Corp-owned news sources should never really be trusted.
Video coming out of Nebraska shows Troy Fisher, the bus driver for StarTran's bus service, attacking one of his passengers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Out, get the off the bus. Okay, yes, sir. What did I say about that's the question you asked me? Yeah, I just asked you a question, man. And I said don't ask any more questions. I'm not for here though, man. What are you gonna man? Why are you afraid of me, man? Oh, man.
Once the victim reported the attack, Fisher was put on probation by StarTran. But once the video surfaced, he was fired and cited with misdemeanor assault. But as you can see from the video of the disgusting attack, Fisher deserves more than a misdemeanor citation and deserves to be charged with a felony. If I were a prosecutor and I had this video, I don't know how I'm not pushing for felony charges, but I want to know what you would do. Is a misdemeanor enough punishment for Fisher and enough to set the example that behavior like this won't be tolerated?
There is an eye-opening must-read column in the New York Times this week by Guantanamo prison inmate Samer Naji al-Hassan Mokbel, who spent 11 years and 3 months at the detention center. Now, he hasn't been charged with any crime and he hasn't seen a trial in his over 11 years there, but his story is that he went to Afghanistan to seek a better job after he was only making $50 at home in Yemen. But once he arrived there, the Americans invaded and he fled like many others to Pakistan. He went to the Yemen embassy in Pakistan but was then arrested, immediately flown to Kandahar, and then flown to Guantanamo Bay, where he's remained ever since. He and 40 others there are on hunger strike to protest their conditions, but they're being violently force-fed to be kept alive every single day. This story highlights one of the biggest disappointments of Barack Obama's time in office. He campaigned to close the detention center when he was a candidate for office, and as soon as he became president, he issued an executive order to close down the facility, but he's run into severe headwinds from congressmen who refuse to allow the transfer of Guantanamo Bay detainees to their home districts. And unfortunately, a poll shows that 70% of Americans agree with the decision to keep the prison open, including a surprising 53% of self-identifying liberal Democrats, according to a poll by the Washington Post. So that's our 2-part poll of the day. Should the military detention center at Guantanamo Bay be closed by transferring the prisoners to facilities in the United States? And 2, will Guantanamo Bay be closed by the end of Barack Obama's second term in office?
The Food and Agriculture Organization at the UN released a visual infographic detailing the effect climate change will have on global food production in the decades to come. In Africa, it will be the worst hit because it holds the world's largest population of hungry people, yet has the fewest resources to adapt. In Europe, a water crisis could ruin crops in the south and send food prices into a shock around the world. Intense droughts, floods, and heat waves in America will send crop yields downward quickly after 2050 in places like California. And finally, in Asia, China's growing food demand will put a strain on international markets as the changing climate will force the country where 1 in 5 people live to buy imported food.
This chart reveals an interesting fact that individual income taxes, what Americans just filed on April 15th, is about 40% of the total amount of money the US government takes in each year, the same proportion as 60 years ago. But it's the corporate income tax that has fallen dramatically, thanks in no small part to corporate America's ever-widening influence on the American political system. As a result, we've had to generate drastically more in payroll taxes to pretty much make up the difference. Whether you're somebody who wants to see individual tax rates fall, or someone who wants to see an increase in the quality and amount of government services, the solution to both is to bring corporate tax rates back to where they had historically been before corporations took over as the dominant force in American politics.
Engineers at UCSD have successfully designed a new nanosponge. The nanometer-sized polymer particles coated in proteins mimic those of human red blood cell membranes, and they're designed to soak up toxins produced by MRSA, E. coli, and poisonous snake bites and bee stings. The nanosponge attracts the toxins in the body and absorbs them so the body's real blood cells aren't attacked. The body then moves the sponges with the toxins in them to the liver, where the body can safely destroy them, because the sides of the toxic molecules that would damage the liver cells is already attached to the sponge, rendering them harmless. The nanosponges haven't been tested in humans yet, but the high success rates in lab mice are leading us to believe that this is the antidote of the future and will become the go-to treatment for us if we ever get poisoned. If the mice were vaccinated before the toxin was introduced, 89% of them lived. And when they were given the nanosponges after being induced with the toxin, 44% of them lived. And when mice were given the nanosponges and the toxin at the same time, the mice suffered no problems, even when the toxin molecules outnumbered the nanosponges 70-1.
These are the 2013 Pulitzer Prize winners in journalism. The Sun Sentinel in Florida won the Public Service Award. The Denver Post staff got the Breaking News Reporting Award. David Barstow and Alejandra Zanuck von Bartrab of the New York Times won for investigative reporting. The entire New York Times staff won for explanatory reporting. Brett Schrade, Jeremy Olson, and Glenn Howat of the Star Tribune in Minneapolis got the Local Reporting Award. Lisa Song, Elizabeth McGowan, and David Hassemeyer of Inside Climate News won for national reporting. David Barboza of the New York Times got the award for international reporting. John Branch of the New York Times won for feature writing. Brett Stevens of the Wall Street Journal won for commentary. Philip Kennicott of the Washington Post won for criticism. Tim Nickens and Daniel Ruth of the Tampa Bay Times won for editorial writing. Steve Sack of the Star Tribune was awarded the Editorial Cartooning Award. Rodrigo Abed, Manu Bravo, Narciso Contreras, Khalil Hamra, and Mohamed Muhaisin of the Associated Press won for breaking news photography, and Javier Monzano, a freelance photographer, won for feature photography. Congratulations to not only the winners, but all of the finalists. You deserve a lot more credit than you get for making the world a more informed, just place.
Rangers patrolling the Waikambas National Park in Lampong say that they have laid eyes on a dozen pygmies from a never-before-seen tribe. According to the Rangers, the pygmies are sporting dreadlocks down to their waist. They're no taller than 50 centimeters. They don't wear any clothes, and they can run like the wind. These pygmies live in a wild place. The jungle is home to the Sumatran elephant, rhinoceros, tigers, and a number of other rare wildlife species. It's estimated that more than 40% of this forest has been damaged due to illegal logging, which is why the rangers believe they've come across the pygmies in the first place. They're desperately trying to find new resources to survive. Thanks for watching this episode of The Daily Conversation. You can find all of the stories linked below back at our website, ywtv.tv, where you can also take the 2-part poll on the closing of Guantanamo. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in tomorrow's episode.